Siddhartha Khemka, Head of Equity Research, Wealth Management with Centrum Broking joins us. Siddhartha, when the markets go up, we all get excited, but when markets reverse, nobody is in a mood to talk and think long term. Everybody wants to do capital protection. So what are you telling your clients? How should they deal with this mid cap carnage?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, Nikunj. It's actually correct when you say that people don't talk about long term when the market is falling, and this is something that we had been advising for past few months, where we had been suggesting to keep booking profits at regular intervals, so that any kind of this fall in the market could be used as an opportunity to look at stocks for the long term. So right now we are still cautious, we are still on the sidelines, we are still asking our clients to wait for the fall to stabilize, and that is the time when one should look at buying good long-term quality stocks for their portfolios.
Have margin calls been triggered, Siddharth?
So I would not know exactly about that. That would be more on the fundamental, on the technical side and on the derivative side. I'm not tracking that currently.
For this kind of a news volatility, Sadat, would you advise your investors to buy into the decline in Max Financials? Because the merger will come through. It could be 3, 6, 12. It could be 18 months. But when the merger will go through, it will lead to birth of a behemoth.
Yes, so as you just highlighted that there is a lack of clarity right now in terms of the merger between HDFC Life and Max Financial, and there was some in the price there was built in that the merger with HDFC will go through, and that is what was reflecting in the price movement which had happened. So the current correction obviously now factors in that there could be delays going by what both the companies are saying, that even if the merger doesn't go through, so HDFC Life is preparing its own roadmap for a listing, because they would have their pressures from minority shareholders, from the promoters, that there has to be a listing, there has to be a valuation unlocking, which if the merger is not providing, they should be prepared for a IPO. It should not happen that at 3 months or 6 months hence they start the process for IPO, and then again the listing will take maybe another 6 months or 1 year hence you will get listed. So right now the view on Max Financial is let's wait it out, let's see for next few days if more clarity comes in terms of how Max and both HDFC go ahead with this, and if the stock stabilizes, it would be a good opportunity for long-term investors to look at Max Financial, which on its own is a very good business model. It's a good business, and long-term investors can look at a stock at lower levels.
Okay. Siddharth, how are you looking at the whole Bharat Financial story? Because we had an exclusive conversation with the management earlier on, and of course Mr. Rao pretty much in between the lines just fell short of admitting that there is a merger possibility on the anvil that they're considering. Given where the stock is as well, valuation wise, that would be compelling.
Yeah, so if you go back in history, about 6 months back, everyone was gung-ho about the microfinance business in India. Companies were trying to get into that space, and larger companies, the banks which didn't have a great exposure, were wanting to get into the space either by themselves or by acquiring some of the larger players, which is where the entire story of Bharat Financial getting taken over by one of the leading private sector banks was there. And then came demonetization, and the entire cycle got stuck, and the NPA issues increased. So the stock fell and then corrected and now has recovered, partly due to the merger news and partly because the valuations were attractive. So at this current juncture, it looks like the stock is still attractive on its own, even if the merger doesn't go through. there is an inherent need requirement in the society for microfinance business. Although the near-term challenges will persist, the NPA challenges are there. These companies, apart from Bharat Financial, the whole host of microfinance companies would need to overcome the near-term challenges in terms of NPAs, and once they are passed through that, you will see again market being enthusiastic by the growth rate, by the value, by the fundamentals, by the return ratios of these companies, and they will come back to in limelight. So at this juncture, an investor having a really long-term view of more than a year to 2 years can look at something called Bharat Financial.
Okay, and Khemka, essentially want your perspective on some of these movers, financing majors in the session.
Yeah, so housing finance is a sector which has done well consistently if you see last few years, and given the current market scenario, I think people are moving or are interested in companies which are not impacted by the global turmoil or the overall macro things. So if you see, the housing finance is a space which consistently has done well quarter on quarter. The growth is upwards of 25-30%. And while the valuations on some of these companies look on the mature side, there's something that market interest is taking them up. So we have a positive bias. However, the valuations for fresh entry are not very comfortable for some of these companies. For few of the smaller companies which we like are Canfin Homes and Repco Home Finance, which are there in our coverage where we have a positive view.
CK, come in on Voltas. I mean, it's a mighty move in Voltas considering the backdrop. 9% on a day like this, if Voltas is holding.
Wrapping up the market. Thanks, Siddharth, for that. The broader markets have succumbed to selling pressure more than the benchmark. Another day of relentless selling for the mid-cap and the small-cap names, and that's getting...